What's up, everybody? Colton, Sulley, Raser. It's OU Texas week. We're back here on the OU Daily Sports podcast the OU Sports podcast from the OU Daily. Let's jump right into it, Lewis. One of the biggest stories this week has been not only here in Oklahoma, but I think more national media are starting to recognize just how good Dillon Gabriel has been this season.
Yeah, I think it's kind of just his career. I mean, he's always put up solid numbers. I think I've mentioned this on the pod. I kind of like compare him to Andy Dalton, which sounds like such a roast, but it's like he's fine. He's going to get the job done. You're not going to lose games because of him. There's no concern about that. Oh, exactly. So I kind of think this is just how his career has gone. But this year, he's like really stepping up to the point where you're talking, is he a top 10 quarterback in the nation right now? I mean, he's certainly playing like it. But I think, like you said, this is going to be the real test here.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would hear what you just said, top 10 in the nation, and be like, no. But like he leads the Big 12 in passing yards, touchdowns, completion percentage, all the major categories. So, I mean, a lot of people would say he's the best quarterback in the Big 12. So, obviously the Pac-12's got a bunch of good quarterbacks, the SEC, the ACC. But Dillon Gabriel's right up there right now, and I don't think that's a stretch to say that. 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 75% completion percentage, something crazy like that.
I think I would say, like, the fact that Gabriel, probably his biggest weakness is his deep ball. I think we can agree about that. Is that, like, when you have a quarterback like that who's not, like, flashy, who's not going to make a ton of the big plays, I feel like that's a huge weakness in terms of just how the public views him. Yeah. Like, they're not going to view him as, like, this big-armed gunslinger who's super fun to watch, who everybody's going to talk about. He's just going to be a solid, take what the defense gives you type of quarterback. And those guys just don't really get talked about, and they don't get a lot of hype.
Yeah, and even though he's made improvement in that area in the deep ball, I mean, you look at the stats, I think he's 4 for 6 on balls 20-plus yard. But you watch the Iowa State game and you see him overthrow somebody, or people see that on TV, that the underthrow and the overthrows are so egregious. They're not even close. Some of them are not very accurate at all. That perception definitely – and we saw that a lot last year, a lot of overthrows, a lot of – just being on a different page with his receivers, and we've seen that again this year, so that's a great point. But how does that segue into OU Texas? I mean, the obvious is last year they didn't have him or a quarterback, really. Couldn't really throw the ball, had to play in the Wildcat a lot. But talked to Dillon last night, wrote a story about him on OUDaily.com. He's super excited to finally get in this one, and so are his teammates. He talked about being in the coach's box last year, having to watch what, I was there to watch, and it was one of the lowest points in OU football history for sure. So I know Dillon and Brent and everybody and all the fans are super confident going into this one, especially with Dillon in the game.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just going to be huge. And all this talk about, we heard him be called a Heisman contender early on by certain fans, especially in Norman. Mm-hmm. Now it's now is the chance to prove it. I mean, you haven't faced – Cincinnati's defense is good. Iowa State has a solid defense. Yeah. Outside of that, you haven't faced anybody who's really, really going to test you. Mm-hmm. It's Texas week. And that's what's going to happen in front of 90,000 fans.
And I'm glad you said that, Lewis, because that segues into our next topic. I mean, from the get-go this season – actually, start of the season we didn't know because they went 6-7. But I think if you looked at the schedule – there was a consensus that was like, we might not know much about this team until Texas week. The schedule was pretty easy. You open up with 5, easy winnable games. And OU did just that. This is the week, Lewis, and I'm going to ask you straight up. I don't know if I'm allowed to call last year a shit show here on this pod, but that's kind of what it was at the Texas game last year. Is this team different? Have you seen enough improvement in the first 5 games, or do you think that this game is going to show us all we need to know?
Well, I think I said on the first episode of this podcast that, if OU loses a game, if they have a loss going into this Texas game, that's kind of a failure. Yeah. The biggest matchup you had was Cincinnati, at Cincinnati, and, that's a solid win. It's quality. But now we're looking at them Cincinnati's 2-3. They lost to Miami of Ohio. They lost to BYU. So, I would say I'm not 100% convinced. I'm not very confident that they're too much different. I definitely think they're improved to some degree, but I really think we're going to, at the same time, you see the SMU game. They struggled for pretty much 3 quarters in that game.
Sure.
You see their lack of stretching the field on offense at times. You see the running back rotation, which no one really knows what's going on with that. The defense last week, that was the solid point. You were thinking, okay, this is going to be the year where maybe we see a OU Texas game where neither team scores 30 points.
Yeah.
And last week in the first quarter and a half, they just got manhandled. I mean, Iowa State ran all over them. You saw the 3rd and 18 where Iowa State scores a touchdown. I mean, that's huge for a team that sucked on 3rd down last year, and they would tell you that.
Yeah.
So I think we're really going to find out this week. I'm not 100% convinced. I do think it'll be a lot closer. Like 49-0 is ridiculous. If that happens again, I'm not sure they come back and play football after the bye week at all.
I totally agree with everything you said there. I mean, you have OU fans. OU fans are going to be OU fans on Twitter saying Big 12 championship, playoff, all of that type of stuff. And I agree that I think the biggest difference between last year's team, not only heading into OU Texas, but as a whole, is this year you see like them making plays and you see them playing good football at times. OU's playing good football right now. I think we can agree with that. I don't think there was a time last year after the Nebraska game where anybody said OU was playing good football at any time. So I think there are 100% improvements. You see it statistically, and you see it with the eye test on defense for sure. Offense improved a lot against Iowa State, like you said, but there are still those deep ball connections or the running back situation that we're still not really sure about. The play calling, whatever it is. I'm with you. I think we're going to find out if OU is made of it or not this week against Texas. But there definitely is some improvements in some areas for sure.
Yeah, and on the Big 12 championship front, like you look at the Big 12 and you're like, okay, how does Oklahoma not make it?
You start to think that. You're right. Yeah.
I mean, who's next in line? Kansas, who Oklahoma plays at OU at Kansas this year.
I think we're going to be seeing OU Texas at Jerry World.
I think so too.
Like, I just don't really see so far anyway. Any other teams that Oklahoma State's down, Baylor's down.
Oklahoma State is way down.
I still think, like you said, Kansas State. I think Kansas State's still hanging around there.
They're in the mix. Kansas is in the mix. BYU has shown some things, but like my point here is OU could make the Big 12 championship and be like an okay team.
Agreed. Like I was telling Jason this, who's not on tonight, but I was telling him this the other day. I think OU is a top 15 team. I think they can beat teams below them in the top 15. I don't think they can beat anybody in that top 10. I think that's kind of where I'm at with them. Is you go down the list of the top 10 and I'm like, maybe they win an upset here or there or like something goes their way, but I think definitively they are I think you could put them in a top 15, top 20 area right now. I think they're playing good football, but like you said, I think it's very possible they go either play in a Big 12 championship or win a Big 12 championship while being just an improved, not a contending team.
Definitely. I agree with that fully.
What do we got on here next to discuss? Oh, yeah. What Brent said today about Texas. He came out and did not want to talk about Iowa State, kind of like us. Everybody's here in this zone.
No one wants to talk about Iowa State.
OU Texas week. Brent was the same way. I mean, he highlighted Quinn Ewers, who is obviously a projected first rounder, has been playing some really good football of late. If Dylan Gabriel wasn't doing what he was doing, Quinn Ewers would lead the Big 12 in all of those categories. But he talked about Xavier Worthy. He talked about Donnie Mitchell. He talked about Jatavion Sanders, who may or may not play in the game. His status is up in the air a little bit. But, Lewis, what did you hear from Brent? I know you were writing about Brent today. What did you hear from him that told us that Texas week is different around here? And this Texas team might be different too. I mean, coming off an upset of Alabama, obviously ranked number 3 in the nation.
Yeah, well, it's funny because, like, Brent comes into the press conference. For context, Brent came in the week before Cincinnati, didn't even give an opening statement. He just got right to it. Hey, let's go into questions. Last week against Iowa State, gave like a minute 30, 2 minutes. He talked for 6 minutes on his opening statement. But at the same time, he started out with a joke. Like, he was cracking a couple jokes. He was talking to the media. He was like, oh, I bet this is the first time you guys are going to ask about the opponent, which is true, by the way, 100%. But he was just very, very lighthearted about it. And all the questions, what he was saying, I feel like was different than like kind of the vibe you got. Because what he was saying was it's just another week, preparation. You tell the guys who haven't played in this game before that it's just like every other week. It's going to be a hostile environment, but you prepare for it like it's a normal game. But at the same time, he's talking about how it's home. He's talking about being such a prideful team, putting out such a good performance week in and week out. So you kind of got he was saying, he was glossing over it like it's just another game, but it's just so tough to believe that.
Yeah, and we're going to get into a little bit more of Brent Venables on OU Texas Week, but here's a little bit of audio of what Brent had to say about the Texas players.
Going to be, again, a wonderful environment against a really talented, hot Texas team. Play, on paper and on film, they play their best when they're playing really good people, and that's Texas has always risen to the occasion and done so. But coming off a really good strong game last week against Kansas, where they had almost 700 yards of offense, and really were unstoppable. And they've been outstanding in all the areas you peel it back, whether that's rush defense or pass defense or scoring defense or red zone defense. If that's offensively, how efficient that they've been. They've got, incredible weapons at the skill position. They lost some great backs last year, and they've obviously shown they've really recruited well. Brooks is one of a number of their backs that is running really, really well. Worthy, Mitchell, Sanders, amongst others, are just some really incredibly talented players. Ewers he's a true freshman last year, played pretty dang good, and is playing at a really high level. Obviously against Alabama in Tuscaloosa, threw for just south of 350 yards and was the national player of the week. So again, we got a great challenge.
All right, you just heard head coach Brent Venables today at his weekly press conference talk about what he sees on tape from a very talented Texas team. But let's get into this a little bit of what we were talking about just now, Lewis, about this week not being like any other week. For context, we usually get around like what would you say, like 15, 20 players, 16 players, yeah. I think one week, which I just want to take a minute and say here on the pod, so grateful for OU athletics this year, especially as compared to some of the college football teams around the country. They've been absolutely excellent. Their communication staff has been so easy to work with and so appreciative of the access that we've gotten all season long. But as we've talked about on the pod, I think last week was the first week we didn't get coordinators on Monday anymore. And then we got word that this week we only got 4 players. It was Dylan Gabriel,
McCabe Latoyer, Woody Washington, Drake Stoops, the usual leaders.
And so that just tells us off the bat that this is not a ordinary week for Brent Venables and OU football. And I'll just go ahead and say, like, as media members, we're never going to be like totally happy with less access than we've gotten before. But I must say I totally get what Brent Venables is saying here. You see Alabama Ole Miss a couple weeks ago. You see the distractions all week that creates, and by putting those leaders out to represent the team to the media, I think was really smart by Brent. Like I said, I'm never gonna be pro less access for the media, but I get what Brent is saying, and I think I know you guys probably don't care as much about the media access point of this, but what I'm trying to say is, like, the way Brent goes about stuff is very telling in the way he runs his program and the vision that he wants. But I think the way that he tackles game weeks, especially in this Texas week differently, just shows how much this game means to him. And it shows, and he had a quote after the game. He was like, I take ownership for last year's Texas game. I think he was pretty, I think he took that to heart. And so yeah, that's just kind of what I gleaned from it. But
Yeah, definitely.
yeah,
He certainly, like, you get that feeling that he's really taking it on his shoulders. Like, this loss was on me. Like, no excuses. No, we had Davis Bevel and for half the game and Wildcat formation for the other half.
Yeah.
Like, no injuries, no roster being depleted by Lincoln Riley leaving. It's on Brent Venables. That's, like, the sense that you get. You get the sense that he's looking in the mirror every night since that game and, like, telling himself that.
sure.
But yeah, I mean, as far as the media access, totally sucks for us.
Yeah.
But like at the same time, the reasoning he gave, I feel
Yeah.
like, was decent. Let's take a listen to why Brent Venables only gave us 4 players this week.
Yeah, I mean, you want me to be totally honest. I know how, like, a lot of times on Mondays or Tuesdays, when you talk to the guys, it's still about last week. You know, it's never about this opponent. And this week is always my 13, 14 plus years experience is that we try to get somebody. That's how I see it, right, wrong, or indifferent. I still like y'all and respect y'all, but it's like, oh, let me see if we can get him to say something. And so now we want to talk about this week's opponent, you know. So we got 4 good ones to represent us, you know, the right way. But that's it.
Does that just speak, though, to, like, this week is different than a lot of weeks?
I mean, it's not different for us in a lot of ways. Most ways it's not. I do think that for the media, it's a bigger deal. That's not a bad thing. It's not a great thing, whatever it is. But that's my experience in dealing, you know, that's a lot of experience.
Yeah, I mean, reasoning makes sense. Like that, I feel like what he said about just wanting to look forward to this week, not wanting them to be worried about, oh, what you did against Iowa State, stuff like that. It makes sense on his part.
For sure. And the fact that we're talking about it on the pod, I think, really tells that, like, how focused he is on this game and how much he wants his team prepared. I think you look at the rankings, and Texas is ranked number 3. You watch them play Bama. I think they know, and I'm of the belief that they have a shot in this game to be competitive, unlike last year, obviously, with Dylan back and everything like that. But let's go back to Dylan. There's another quarterback on the other side who we mentioned briefly in Quinn Ewers. Lewis, how do the 2 quarterbacks stack up in your mind? Obviously, Quinn Ewers was a 5-star. The talent is – you just see the talent when you look at him. Was a guy out of South Lake Carroll, went to Ohio State for a year, transferred back home to Austin, to Texas, had a really good year last year. Doing the same this year, is on pace to be a first-rounder. And then you have Dylan Gabriel, on the other hand, played at UCF, wasn't too highly recruited. He's from Hawaii. Transferred to UCLA briefly. Didn't play. Day of classes comes to OU after everything that went down here. We know what happened last year. We know the start he's off to this year. Take us through kind of the quarterback battle that we're about to see on Saturday.
Well, I think with Quinn Ewers, you're getting more talent, like just natural talent. I mean, he can throw the ball a mile. Like he's going to give you all the flash plays, all the big plays, not necessarily flash in like a bad way, in like a 2012 Johnny Manziel way, but like in a good way. I mean, with Dylan Gabriel, it's more of just like we were talking about earlier. He's not going to give you – he's not a good deep ball thrower, but he's going to take what the defense gives you. He's not going to lose the game for you. I don't feel like there's a game that OU has lost since he's been here that was like solely because of Dylan Gabriel.
No.
Definitely contributed to some of them, but not like completely on his shoulders. But I will say Quinn Ewers is starting to get that maturity, I feel like, this year. I mean, last year you look at a guy who's just kind of like completely raw talent, and this year he's starting to more get it down. Hasn't put up like super crazy numbers, especially I think Dylan's numbers side by side are better, but there's a lot to factor into that. Competition and whatnot. So yeah, I think we're in for a good battle. I think Dylan probably has the maturity and just the experience, but I mean Quinn Ewers is coming along from that route, and you know obviously is a great player with a ton of talent.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to watching him play in person. You nailed it, Lewis. I don't think there's much else I need to say there.
I will say, like, I think the big point here is going to be, like, who's the quarterback that's going to mess up? Like, is Dylan Gabriel, we've seen him be really, really poised. We've seen him look comfortable, especially second year with Levy and with Brent. But, like, is he going to have those mistakes in game? Is he going to start overthrowing guys deep? Is he going to throw a pick? Stuff like that.
Well, that goes back to this is his first for Red River. Quinn has that experience from last year. Obviously, he's also in his second year under Sark, and we've seen that offense just flourish. So you bring up some good points there.
I also like the wide receiver battle is interesting because, like Brent said earlier, Texas has some home run hitters, as he put it.
And I don't want to go back to Iowa State, but there were moments in that you can't help but think about Texas, like 2-3 weeks out from it. Yeah. I'm sitting there in the first half, and Iowa State had those 2 deep passes, and I'm like, what is Quinn Ewers and Xavier Worthy going to do next week? So it looked like they fixed that in the second half, but still. That's a threat, and it's a very real threat. Texas can put up some points, and they can score when they want. So I think that's going to definitely be something to watch for sure.
Yeah.
Something else that created some buzz this week, not Sports Illustrated anymore. Now Yahoo's Ross Dillinger put out a tweet, or he said on a podcast or something, that SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey will be at OU Texas, and how unique that is. A commissioner that's of a conference going to another conference game, where 2 schools are in that conference. Obviously, OU and Texas will be in the SEC, but pretty unique, pretty unprecedented, and that caused some discussion on Twitter and various social media platforms. But also when Big 12 commissioner was asked by Heather Dinich of ESPN if he was going, if he was going to the game, and he said, or what his thoughts were on Greg Sankey going to the game, and he was like, that's his future, like, whatever. Yeah. And then Brett Yormark is not going to be at the game, correct? We got that.
Right. He went to OU Cincy, and then he'll go to another OU game. I think he's going to 2 of each OU Texas.
I talked to Greg Sankey on the phone today, and he told me like he's super excited about it. His grandpa is actually from Oklahoma. His entire family was super excited when OU won the Natty in 2000. He said his uncle was really mad at him there a couple years ago whenever there was buzz about OU joining the SEC, and he couldn't really talk about it. His uncle was pretty upset as a big OU fan, but yeah, I talked to him. He's going to be in and out. He's got like a wedding or something to go to in Austin like the night before, and then so he's going to fly into Dallas the morning of. He said he's only going to stay for the first half. He's going to try and talk to both presidents, both ADs, and then he's going to jet at halftime because A&M Alabama and College Station starts at 2:30. And OU's obviously at 11 a.m. So, but that's just kind of his plans. I know people were pretty interested in that on social media this week, but that's that, and that'll be cool to have him there at the game, and obviously everybody knows what the future holds. So.
Definitely. I kind of agree with Brent Yormark, like what he said. He's like, okay, that's your future. Like, go ahead, go watch it. Kind of soak in the experience. Didn't know that about Sankey's family. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yep. Another, like, bit that I didn't know, Woody Washington last night said, like, his uncle used to be a Texas fan or something growing up. Yeah. So, all kinds of sides to this rivalry.
You can definitely listen to more of my conversation with Greg Sankey in a story that it will be online this week, pretty soon. But Lewis, OU got a commitment today, and it was not one I was expecting. It was from 2026. I didn't even know. That made me kind of feel old, even though I'm like 21 years old. I was like 2026, like my little brother graduates in 2024. I'm like, dang, but. Anyway, OU got their first commitment of the 2026 class. Jonathan Hatton Jr., a 4-star running back out of San Antonio. I believe he had offers from Baylor, K-State, places like that, Lewis. But what does that tell you? Obviously, we don't know a ton about him because he's a fresh prospect and he's 2026. But the focus on running backs. Obviously, you have Taylor Tatum, who's a borderline 5-star. You have Xavier Robinson, who plays with Kevin Sperry at Carl Albert. OU doesn't have a commit in 2025, but what does it tell you, just watching from afar, of DeMarco and Brent's, eagerness to offer this kid this early out?
DeMarco's cooking. That's what it tells me, basically. But
I find it a little odd with the running back context we're having this season. I know it has nothing to do with it, but
true. I was kind of like when you were talking about it, I was kind of thinking that, but maybe they're trying to recreate that Samaje Perine, Joe Mixon sort of dynamic there, because obviously you don't want 4 guys like you have this year where it's just kind of a cluster. But
Yeah.
like, I mean, what Mixon and Pirine did, that's kind of like what you're aiming for, I feel like. So, maybe this could be it. Who knows? But it's also years down the line. I mean, I won't even be covering OU football anymore. You'll be a couple years out of college. So
who knows where I'll be, but. All right, we're going to do a little segment here on the pod.
Best part of the podcast right here.
We're going to go through some crazy foods at the state fair here. We're just going to go down the list of the menu. I think, best or craziest fair food here. We're going to go down to Dallas on Friday, obviously before the game, and try some crazy foods. But, Lewis, I'm just looking at the list here. Chicken fried bacon. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I love chicken. I love frying stuff, and I love bacon. I can't really see how you can go wrong on
that one I would eat. There was one we were talking about off camera. Producer Kaylee brought it up. Fried Coke.
I'm
actually
intrigued.
Coke. It's soda that's fried.
I'm so intrigued by that. I would do it.
I wouldn't eat that.
Oh, I 100% would.
I don't know. Okay.
You wouldn't
You're
at
crazy.
least like try it?
Maybe. I just don't like Coke either. You know me. I'm a Dr. Pepper person.
That's
I don't
that's
know.
its own thing.
Soda fried. I don't know about that. We got fried gumbo balls. Fruity Pebbles fried shrimp. What?
Fruity.
Fried pickle pizza? What are your
No.
thoughts on that one? No?
Not a pickle guy.
Not a pickle
So-
guy? Me neither.
No way.
What was that other crazy one we had?
Fried butter.
Fried butter? No, I'm not going with the fried. I know everything's fried. I'm on a
That's
Fletcher.
like everything.
I'm getting a Fletcher's corny dog.
What is that? It's just a
Lewis.
corn dog.
Yes.
I've been to the Texas State Fair one time. I didn't grow up around here, but
Yeah.
like
He's from Cincinnati, but
I went last year. It
well, you're
was
gonna get you a
solid.
Fletcher's corny dog, and that'll really do it. Honestly, a lot of people carry on the turkey leg. I'm not big on the turkey leg either.
I've seen that.
I'm not big on the. I do like and this is fried. So, what is it called? The sugar fried stuff.
Funnel cake?
Yeah, funnel
Funnel
cake.
cake?
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
love
I will
funnel cake.
I will destroy a funnel cake on Friday, but
Oh yeah.
fried Frito pie bites.
See, like half this stuff, I'm intrigued enough to try it. Unless it's like something
I would try
pickle,
them. I
like
would
there's
try
some
them,
ingredient that pops out that I'm like, no. I'm like,
I'll try the bacon
try
chicken
it.
and the Frito pie bites, but
definitely.
you'll have to stay tuned. Maybe we'll do a TikTok or story about that or something. but-
100%. You can catch me getting some fried Coke on Friday.
Also, the weather is supposed to be fantastic. I don't know if you've seen the forecast, but
Has there ever?
60s, 70s, 50s in Dallas.
When was the last time in OU Texas was under
Dude, every
70
time
degrees?
I've went, I've been baked.
Yeah.
Sweating. But
100%.
I'll believe it when it comes. I'm still a little skeptical that that's going to stay, but can't wait for that, guys. We were going to read our OU Texas column that we do with the Daily Texan every year. We're not quite done with it. We're doing some tinkering on that, so you have to stay tuned if we post that this week on OUDaily.com. But I think it's that time of the week. It's what everybody's been talking about, Lewis, not only here in Oklahoma, but in Texas and nationally as well. This one can go either way. I still don't even know where I'm going to land on this one, but we're gonna have to do some sort of prediction here, Lewis.
Definitely. Well, I'd start out by saying I don't think this is the last matchup between these teams. I think they meet in the Big 12 championship, which, like, that's obviously not a hot take or anything. I mean, like we were saying, who else is going to be there? Like, it's pretty clear cut that, like, it's these teams unless something goes wrong. Maybe Kansas beats OU. Something like that would have to happen.
For sure.
But as far as this game, man, I don't know. The Texas's offense and like how high powered they are, that's what's tripping me up. Because you've seen so much defensive improvement from OU. But as far as the pass game, that secondary is really going to be tested. We saw even against Tulsa, a couple blown coverages, a couple ugly plays.
Yeah.
I think Texas ends up. I got Texas at 37 here, and I got OU 27. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think Texas. I just think they're the better all-around team. I think that offense gets the best of OU's defense a little bit. As far as OU's offense, I think they have relative success, definitely more than last year. I think the receiver depth continues to show. Get multiple guys involved. That's what you're going to do. That's how you're going to have success in this game. I do obviously worry about the offensive line, like we've been worried about the offensive line all year, because they're definitely weaker than years past. But overall, I got Texas 37-27, edging out a victory.
Yeah, I'm going to go in a similar vein. I think it's a little closer. I got Texas 34, OU 31. I think this game's going to come down, as it has in the past, a lot to special teams. Brent talked about it today a little bit, but there's been some struggles on special teams for OU, and that would be something I would be concerned about going into this game. But we've seen it in the past where there was Dicker the kicker. This year it's Burt Auburn, I think. So I don't know, but I think special teams are going to play a big part, and I see Texas winning by a field goal. However, like you said, I think mentally and after the game, I don't think we'll feel like this is a loss for Oklahoma. To me, if OU keeps it within 3 or 7 or 10 and plays well and passes the eye test, like you said, they could meet them again. And I don't think a lot of people entered this season going, OU's going to beat Texas. Like,
right.
I'm not sure that was really on anybody's radar. So I still think that this game, kind of like Colorado Oregon. Or Colorado USC. Did you watch Colorado USC the other day? That was a win for Colorado in my book. Coming 100%. Back from all the way that they did.
I think you feel better if you're a Colorado fan.
That's kind of what I'm equating this game to, and obviously it's a rivalry. Fans aren't going to be happy. Yeah. Players and coaches obviously aren't going to be happy with the loss, but I think just
like the fact that they're set up to go to the Big 12 championship, like they're the front runners for that, is kind of like, okay, you got us, but
I still think
see you next time.
I think they play well. I think OU plays well. I think Texas is just very, very solid. This is the best Texas team since the national championship team, in my opinion. I think they've got so many weapons. They got so many talent that we haven't even talked about the defense. We talked all about the offense and Brent Raven about the offense, but that defensive line, man. I wrote it in one of my stories the other day. I think they're going to create havoc on that offensive line you just talked about. I think Dylan is going to get in a little bit of, chaos there, but they've just got talent up and down the board, and we saw them go toe-to-toe in Tuscaloosa and beat Alabama. This Texas team's different, and I think OU is up for the challenge, though, and I could definitely see OU winning this game, but I'm going to lean Texas by 3.
Definitely. I think 3-point game, honestly, I like OU. Just the way the rivalry has been recently, the way that OU always seems to edge those out.
Yeah.
The comeback in 2021, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Just the fact that I don't want to say they own the rivalry over the past 20 years, but it's definitely swayed towards OU, with the exception of last year. So 3-point game, I like OU, but overall, I like Texas to separate a little bit, get a 10-point victory.
Gotcha. Well, there you have it. Colton, Sulley, Lewis, Raser. We will be down at the Cotton Bowl and the State Fair of Texas all day Friday into Saturday night. And hope you follow along on OUDaily.com. We got some really cool stories to preview that game coming this week. So just follow us on social media. Hit us up on OUDaily.com, and we'll see you next week. But thanks for listening.